Good afternoon, it's David Schlotthauer with an update on Hurricane Lee for Wednesday, September 13th, 2023. All of my videos and live streams are for entertainment purposes only and to discuss raw operational model guidance and its ensembles. I'm also comparing models, so please seek official sources like the National Weather Service, the National Hurricane Center, or the Weather Channel for more detailed and accurate information. So taking a look at Hurricane Lee for Wednesday afternoon, September the 13th here from Dr. Levi Cowan at tropicaltidbits.com, his website with the visible satellite imagery. We can see that Hurricane Lee is very large in size by all means. The cloud field is large. We have concentric eye walls, so that means we have multiple eye walls that are orbiting around the eye. That's what you see here on the imagery, and this is allowing the wind field to expand even further as this passes or moves generally towards the north-northwest at about 9 or so miles an hour. For reference, here is Bermuda, and here is the Northeast, because now we have tropical storm watches and hurricane watches for your guys' area. If you are watching this from Maine, if you're in Nova Scotia, if you're watching this from Cape Cod, yeah, this is going to be a pretty big monster when it arrives into your area by Saturday night, even into Sunday. So looking at the closer zoomed in view on Hurricane Lee, again, as I stated, here we have concentric eye walls. Here is the eye right in here. Very large system by all means. This is not compact like we had just almost a week ago, like 5 or 6 days ago, when it was very, very small, rather small, and really intense. Category 5 intensity that Lee did. Now it's a much larger system here, and we can see the winds going all the way around here. And speaking of that, we have really strong winds being found on the eastern and southeastern side of Lee itself. And we can show you that here in a second on Recon Data, showing you that this is a huge, huge hurricane. Even so it's not a major hurricane anymore, it really won't matter very much because the wind field is absolutely large. A lot of the energy is being spread apart with this system. So looking at the water vapor imagery here, we have a lot to look at here. Of course, we have a lot of moisture being fanned out to the north by the feathery white cirrus, by a lot of southerly and southwesterly shear that is encroaching onto the system. But also, if we look off towards the west, we have this patch of dry air, these darker gray colors. This is actually making its way into the southern side of the system and actually is able to wrap almost halfway around the system. So the ending result here is we're getting a lot of dry sections of the storm. So in between each eye wall, what we call them dry slots or moats in these systems usually contain some of the strongest winds. Actually, the winds could be lighter, but within these eye walls or these convective like banding features, you can see some very intense wind gusts, well over 115 miles an hour, possibly even 130 mile an hour wind gusts with some of those bands. Recon did their mission this morning, and they have found that the maximum winds were really well removed. There's really no significant eye wall here at all. It's a very large eye in itself, and one could even argue that the eye is probably even this big right now. So this is a huge system with major hurricane force winds, perhaps at flight level, not at the surface necessarily, being indicated right around 110, 105, maybe 115 miles an hour. Again, these are really strong winds, even way out here where the plane flew, found hurricane force winds, all in purple. That is winds greater than 64 knots or about 73, 74 miles an hour. We could also see this on the latest data from the Recon aircraft. This was released about an hour and a half ago, and the yellow, for reference, is hurricane force winds. The orange is category 2 force winds, and see this little strip? That is still category 3 force winds nearly at the surface. So that is showing you all how large Lee actually is, and even one could argue that the eye at times is even 25, maybe even 40 miles across. So this has a huge, huge eyeball on it, and right in the middle is where you find your lightest winds. So Now, I wanted to show you this too, that the Air Force mission, the upper level drop zone, is conducting drop zones around Hurricane Lee at this moment. And I want to show you a couple of soundings. I'm not going to show you the whole thing because we know this whole area is really moist. We're waiting for more drop zones to come in from the G4 aircraft that is flying at 48,000 feet to better get this southern side if there is a lot of dry air. Doesn't seem like they're doing any drop zones at the moment, but I could be wrong. But they did do 12 of these from the upper parts of the atmosphere. And what they have found is that the air is fairly dry. So if we go to drop zone number 6, that is right on the Sierra's outflow canopy. They have found some really dry air at 400 and 300 millibars, which is roughly about in the ballpark of 28,000, maybe 31,000 feet high. And you can see the sounding for reference here, finding some dry air at these levels. And this is the soon to become of a transition to an extratropical cyclone eventually within a few days once this drier air gets kind of wraps almost all the way around the system. It kind of chokes off any moist inflow. We also have another drop that I wanted to show you. Drop zone number 5. Also really dry drop zone. Yeah, we'll do 5 for reference. And you can see here 4%, 3% humidity, 2%. So very dry air in the deep layers, all the way from about 500 millibars all the way up to the barotropic layer, which is at around 150 millibars, 200 millibars. That's literally where jet planes usually fly at. So just showing you that there is a lot of dry air off to the west, and that will soon become a inhibitor and a whole structure change with Lee's future once it goes northward, but will remain a hurricane all the way up nearly to landfall. So looking at the latest NHC right now, winds are down 105 miles an hour, moving off towards the north-northwest at 10 miles an hour, and boy, look how large that hurricane wind field is. It is massive. We're talking really large tropical storm force winds. So even so, yes, the center is not going to be impacting Bermuda directly. I mean, if this wind field stays this large or it even expands, you could get clipped here with hurricane force winds. Possibly. It is not a guarantee, but it is going to be close. Possibly anywhere between 65 to 70 mile an hour tropical storm force winds impacting Bermuda. And yes, there is 65,000 people that live on the island of Bermuda in present times, and this is going to be moving generally towards the north over the next 3 days. And as you can see, H's represent hurricane. Eventually, we're looking at tropical storm watches that are issued right now for Cape Cod. So yes, very populated area. This is breaking news. We also got hurricane watches issued for southeastern Maine, along the coast there. So this could be a really big deal, folks. We are looking at the potential for storm surge flooding. We're looking at high surf that could reach 20 to 30 feet. We're also looking at possible some coastal flooding and freshwater flooding with this storm. Okay, and we're going to be looking at the models here in a second, in a little bit here, to kind of better diagnose with what we could be dealing with. So looking at the latest 5 o'clock advisory, Bermuda has a very high chance right now, 70 to 90% chance of getting tropical storm force winds. And yes, tropical storm force winds arriving by Saturday morning, even in some areas here by early, by like 2 or 3 in the morning on Saturday over Cape Cod, Nantucket, Rhode Island, then eventually getting into Maine there by 8 p.m. where you have a 30 to 50% chance of tropical storm force winds. So if any of you are saying this is going to be a fish storm, it really does not look likely. This is going to make landfall somewhere, and right now it looks like right in between Nova Scotia and perhaps Maine at the moment. So the key messages, and I want to really emphasize this, okay, because some of you might underestimate this because, oh, it's not a major hurricane anymore, doesn't mean anything is going to get better. Okay, tropical storm conditions, heavy rainfall, and high surf are expected to impact Bermuda beginning early Thursday, and a tropical storm warning is in effect for the island. Hurricane conditions, heavy rainfall, and coastal flooding are possible in portions of the eastern Maine on Saturday, and a hurricane watch has been issued for that area. Number 3, there is a potential for life-threatening storm surge flooding in portions of southeastern Massachusetts, including Cape Cod, Nantucket, late Friday into Saturday, where a storm surge watch has now been issued. So not only we have tropical storm watches, but we also have storm surge watches for this area. Okay, this is, again, a really large storm. So there is going to be some storm surge anywhere between maybe 2 to maybe 4 feet high, and that might not seem like a lot, but remember, we have millions of people that live in the Northeast, especially in Nantucket, Rhode Island. If you are in Boston, Massachusetts, this is for you, okay? Number 4, tropical storm conditions are possible over a large portion of coastal New England, including Cape Cod, Nantucket, Martha's Vineyard, and Block Island, where a tropical storm watch has been issued. Okay, so again, I mean, all these key points you need to actually take this seriously. Even so, it's weakening. Yes, we're going to see this about 75 to 80 mile an hour winds, but man, it's going to have one heck of a wind field, and this is what we have right now, really large. Tropical storm force winds in orange, hurricane force winds in red or maroon colors, and this is all going to track north in this general direction, and you can bet that if you follow the arrow here, this wind field expands. You could get tropical storm force winds over the Nantucket, Connecticut, Cape Cod, as well as Martha's Island, including for Massachusetts. Not even going to mention this too, maybe even over Long Island, might get tropical storm force wind gusts out of the northwesterly direction, out of Lee's outer portion. So I want to read this to you all really quickly. It's my job at providing this information. I'm just going to read the first paragraph, and then I'm going to read the last one. The Air Force hurricane hunters investigated Lee earlier this afternoon and found that the hurricane has lost some strength. The initial intensity is lowered to 90 knots based on aircraft data. Although the core winds have decreased some, the wind field has become quite expansive, with hurricane force winds now extending roughly 100 miles away from the center. And again, tropical storm force winds probably well over 200 miles, maybe even 250 miles away from the center. That's pretty large, okay? The satellite appearance of Lee has been relatively steady state through the day, and there is still evidence of concentric eye walls. All right, so the environment ahead of Lee is expected to gradually become less conducive for the hurricane as it moves over a region of higher wind shear, drier air that we looked at on the G4 aircraft, and over progressively cooler sea surface temperatures. These conditions favor weakening, but I want to make it clear, you guys hear weakening as a saving grace that, oh, at least it's not going to be a major hurricane. But since the system is so large, the weakening process should be rather slow. The NHC intensity forecast is a little lower than the previous one, in part due to the initial lower wind speed, and that remains with the HCCA and IVCN guidance. Regardless of details, there is high confidence that Lee will be a large hurricane near the coast of New England Friday night and Saturday. So again, just because weakening happens, the wind field will continue to expand, and it doesn't surprise me if we have hurricane force winds that eventually expand all the way out to maybe 150 miles out, and tropical storm force winds eventually that could get as far out from the center as 300 miles or even more than that. So my point here is that just because it's weakening, don't underestimate Lee at all. We know how big Lee is now, and we know how bad it could end up being. Remember, for reference, Hurricane Sandy, that was only a 90-mile-an-hour system at landfall, and look how much destruction it actually presented. Let's see how strong Lee could be when it makes landfall, but right now, most of the intensity guidance does indicate it will be down to about a 75-mile-an-hour hurricane right before landfall. Might even be weaker than that, might even be stronger. All right, now looking at the GFS model, timing this out, we can see where Lee is headed. It is headed north, but now there's going to be a little bit of a wiggle towards the northwest here, as you can see on the GFS model. See that? See that turn right there? Ooh, and I got it just right on the spot. So you can see this outer field here of light to moderate to even heavier rainfall, including for Cape Cod. Yes, you've been through much worse storms than this, like nor'easters, but this one, it's going to have lots of rainfall, some storm surge, and a lot of problems. So therefore, we've got to take this one a little serious. Now, by the time, and by the way, this is for Saturday morning, okay? And this is Saturday evening or afternoon on September the 16th. And we can see lots of heavy rainfall here, maybe some tornadoes, maybe some water spouts kind of orbiting around the center here. So definitely a system to watch. Now, a live stream is certainly possible, but not expected at the moment. We will have to keep on Lee's intensity and see how strong it will be here at the moment. But probably a high-end tropical storm or a low-end hurricane, but it won't matter here. There's going to be a lot of impacts. Looking at the European model here, this is for tomorrow afternoon. Again, it's moving north. Here is Bermuda. Very strong winds here. Near hurricane force, sustained winds with certain that you could have hurricane force wind gusts. But again, small island here with a population of 60 to 70,000 people. Definitely a system to really keep a close eye on. Surf or high surf, coastal flooding, storm surge, heavy rainfall, that sort of thing is expected as Lee passes just to the west of you all. And then going forward here, same with the Euro, it wants to bring this system, so it's going like this, it wants to bring it a little closer and then out like that. And you can see this here, the evolution on the Euro, indicating that little turn to the left. And how close this gets exactly is still to be announced. This could get a little closer, but right now it is not expected to make landfall over Cape Cod at the moment, but heavy rainfall will follow. And this is Saturday morning, and it looks like this is Saturday afternoon. So it looks like we have pretty good agreement now that a landfall somewhere either on Nova Scotia, between Nova Scotia, or on Maine is certainly in the ballpark of possibility. Now looking at the amount of rainfall that Lee is expected to bring here, and you all here on Maine, as well as the New England coast, like Cape Cod, you could see anywhere between a half an inch to maybe about an inch and a quarter of rain there. And then you go towards Maine, you might see 4 to 6 inches. That's a lot of rain, okay, for such a big system. That's pretty impressive. So you're going to see some flood concerns there, along to go with, again, the threat for maybe coastal flooding. The Euro, a little bit less aggressive with the rainfall totals, but still in the ballpark between about an inch to maybe 2 or 3 inches in the forecast. Again, this falls within about 1 to 2 days. So you're looking at a lot of moisture that could accumulate in that area. So now looking at our ensemble forecast, this is, again, I want to cover as much detail as I can, make sure I'm thorough with what I say, is that the Euro ensemble, there's still a potential here that eastern Maine could get a landfall as a strong tropical storm or mid-grade system. And then, of course, if it moves a little to the east, maybe a strong tropical storm or a low-grade hurricane. All right, so that's going to be the difference. But look at some of our members here want this on top of Cape Cod or near it, which, again, we use ensembles for a reason. And so, therefore, we are going to really have to watch Lee's future on what might happen. And as long as this remains a threat, we will be making daily videos on this until landfall. Then look at the GFS model a little bit further to the east here. Not as much coverage over Maine, but also not as many members that the GFS utilizes. So therefore, most of the members are on top of or on top of Nova Scotia, as well as right between these two areas, these land masses. But it won't matter very much, a tropical storm or not, maybe a low-grade hurricane. This is a system of huge concern. So now, how strong will Lee be on the approach to, say, the Northeast, like Cape Cod, as well as maybe Nova Scotia? You're looking at perhaps a low-grade hurricane or a high-end tropical storm. A lot of the models here now weakening this completely, all indicating a downward trend. And then this could really be gone and done by about day 3. or by day 4, even maybe, yeah, by day 4, it's a low-grade tropical storm or nothing at all, maybe a post-tropical storm or a depression. So now something that I don't normally show in my videos is windy.com. And the reason why I'm showing you this is how formidable the dynamics will be when the system transitions into a barotropic or baroclinic trough. And what I mean by that is if we look at this is the 250 millibar winds. This is at around 34,000 feet. You can see a trough here being carved out. One piece of this trough kind of does this. So we get kind of like a little, kind of a scoop underneath this flow. And to the north of this, look at this baroclinic outflow channel here. This is a very classic look on what a nor'easter would look like, or with any winter storm with this outflow that does something like this. And I mean, that is pretty substantial. And when we go forward in time, we can see how that outflow really gets going. I mean, we got even easterly winds right here that do this, and we got that flow in place. Not only that, I wanted to show you all the moisture plot too at this level, and look at very similar to with what you would see with the nor'easter, with again this channeling of the moisture that goes out like this. So very impressive with a lot of dry air that kind of gets underneath that. I really like how these systems kind of undergo extratropical transition, and that's what we would be seeing by Saturday afternoon, by Saturday night perhaps, when extratropical transition would likely be completed. But regardless, strong winds, heavy rainfall are a big possibility, and I wanted to actually show you all the wind gusts here too on the model. Okay, so let's go to wind gusts, and you can see here, let's use a euro for a best reference. And you can see wind gusts right off the coast, 80 miles an hour. So some very intense winds as this moves northward and impacts over Clark's Harbor in Nova Scotia. You can get wind gusts perhaps 80 miles an hour. And the surf, too, with this is going to be pretty large. 31-foot breaker, 31-foot waves with some breakers approaching 50 to 60 feet. There is going to be some big time impacts. And look at this. Right over Clark's Harbor, 33-foot waves. So now that we got a lot of the information that you all wanted to see, we're now going to be talking about Invest 97L. I know this is going to be a long video because we want to also talk about that, because now that could be threatening Bermuda. So we're not talking about just about Lee here impacting Bermuda indirectly with some on those winds. We're also talking about 97L that could become our next major hurricane potentially. And there is some model impetus on this, that this has a high ceiling, just like what Lee did when that had a high ceiling. And we knew ahead of time how strong that was going to get before it even became that strong. So looking at the central Atlantic wide on the true color imagery on Dr. Levi Cowan's website, again, we can see here is that entangled mess. It's really hard to see where this system is exactly located. One could even notice that maybe it's over here. We have another area of spin off the side of the map here that is also moving in tandem. So it's going to be critical or crucial which area consolidates. Does this area try to consolidate? And if so, this could actually make a run further south and then turn north or northwest before, or should miss the Leeward Islands. You guys have been getting lucky, except for Brett, that went through your area. But unfortunately, that you might be getting more indirect impacts to this system too. So looking at the GFS model on this, back to tropical tidbits, again, on 97L, that is over here, it is very hard to locate exactly where the center is consolidating at. So right now, it remains somewhat of an entangled mess. It's not really organized by any means. The center is becoming a little bit more better defined, but it needs to get more better for us to better locate it. By the way, this system right now on the NHC, if we go actually to that really quickly, this has now a 90% chance of tropical formation. Did not want to forget about Margot up here near the, not far from the Azores, 90-mile-an-hour winds too. So again, 2 hurricanes going on in the Atlantic with another area that we are going to watch. And again, this could get close to Bermuda, so Bermuda might need to be watching this one in days to come too. And again, as long as this becomes a big enough threat, we're going to have to start making more updates on this system too. So now going forward here, let's kind of move this out to 102 hours out. This is for Sunday, September the 17th, and we can see 964 millibars, but this gets even more stronger. Let's go forward here down to 944 millibars on the latest GFS model. This is for Tuesday morning next week, September the 19th. For reference, where is Bermuda, you might ask? Bermuda is actually right there, that dot that I put up on the screen. And look how close this gets to Bermuda. I mean, it gets on top of them. And that pressure right there is 954, 956 millibars. So possibly another powerful Category 2 hurricane, perhaps maybe even a low-grade major hurricane impacting you all. And yeah, this one, if the GFS ends up being correct, and it's been really close. In fact, if we look at the previous model runs, you can see, I mean, look how close it is. That is really, really dangerously close. And I don't know if I can zoom in on this to show you all. I don't think Tropical Tidbits provides that. Maybe it does. But it is right there is where Bermuda is. And boy, that is awfully close and too close for comfort at all. So we're going to watch a 97L in days to come for sure. There's no way to ignore that. Looking at the European model, it's a little slower to get the consolidation going here, as you all can see on the precipitation map. And then going forward here, this is out to day 5, still 996. So it's not in a hurry to get 97L explosively to intensify, but eventually it does. And look at how close that gets. Very close to the GFS model. And if that's not enough, look at the Canadian right on top of Bermuda. So 3 of the global models are very dangerously close to the island of Bermuda. And this could be within the next 7 to 10 days, plus or minus. Okay, again, we don't know exactly when this is going to hit Bermuda, but we know that it could come within 100 or so miles from hitting Bermuda. And we do not want a major hurricane hitting that small island with 65,000 people that live on it. Okay, so now to the ensemble forecast on 97L. Big spread. I mean, we don't know where this is headed. I mean, some of the models indicate that it's going to do this. Some of the members indicate that it's going to kind of do this. So huge spread, anywhere from perhaps where Lee moved over to perhaps where we have almost where Margot is. So a big spread, huge by all means. There's no confidence in the forecast at all, and that is within 8 days. So looking at 97L on the GEFS, again, also a big spread. Actually, wait, I just looked at that. That's kind of the same thing, but this is kind of similar with the pressure. So again, what we talked about is big spread. Hey, here's a look at the Euro ensemble forecast. Again, a huge model spread here as far as all 50 members. Again, there's 50 members that run the operational deterministic Euro model, and this is a ensemble forecast. So therefore, there is very, very, very low confidence until we get a lot of the spaghetti plot here to agree and it look more like what Lee is. See how skinny the spaghetti plot over Lee is? That's what we want to see with our spaghetti plot on 97L. But either way, some of the members here want this to a strong hurricane perhaps within the next 7 to 10 days. Now looking at the hurricane model forecast, also tightly clustered here within the next 4 days. But again, it all depends on where the center reforms, how far west it can get. So this can change very substantially. So do not agree on what you see here as far as the spaghetti plot. Now looking at the 97L model intensity guidance, again, here's your ceiling. All of the models pretty much bring this up to hurricane intensity within 4 to 5 days. And even more of the models, especially the HWFI and a lot of these down here, indicate a major hurricane. That is winds greater than 115 miles an hour. Does this mean we will see a major hurricane? No, it does not mean we will, but the ceiling on 97L is more like that of Lee. Remember, all the spaghetti plots indicated that Lee could become a Category 3, Category 4, if not a Category 5. What did we see with Lee? A Category 5. So that's why we do have to watch this one, because Bermuda, people live on Bermuda. It's not like it's an island of abandonedness. It's not a ghost town island. People live there, and you all on Bermuda are just as important to me as you all living in the United States are just as important to me. So as long as this remains a close call with Bermuda, we might as well start doing updates on 97 in days to come. So now that we talked about Lee, I wanted to get that out of the way first. And now that we talked about 97L, that has now a 90% chance of tropical formation, I hope you all take my word seriously on Lee. There's tropical storm watches issued for the Northeast, including a hurricane watch for Maine. So again, take this seriously. Do not reverse your plans because Lee is being sampled a little weaker. This could strengthen a little bit more. We don't know, but most likely it's in the weakening state. And then, of course, we got to watch 97L. We're not going to worry about Margot since it's just going to kind of hang out here. It's doing a track similar to this. It's just going to stay right where it's at. Not going to move much at all. And so we're not going to talk about Margot in future videos. Well, anyways, that's going to do it with today's video. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you all did, please consider subscribing. It really means a lot. I can't do these without your diligent support. Share this, like, and also you can follow me on Twitter. And you can check out the Weather Force Discord server if you're a member. It is open to members only on the 15th.